Welcome to your next lesson, planning and writing your draft. Step 1, plan. As you guys know, on your calendar, you have to submit your story map completed before you begin your draft. So step 1, plan, is completing your story map, okay? So the first thing that I think would be easiest for you to do would be to determine your setting. What's your time and place? Like Esperanza Rising, your place might start in your character's country of origin, their home country, and might eventually move to the United States. You need to select a time period for your immigrant story. Next, you need to name your major and minor characters. They all need to have a name and an age. I think that's a good way for you to kind of get the basics down for those characters that you're building. So, of major and minor characters, I would start with their name and age, and then you can begin to develop those characters as you write. Next, you need to write your theme, your lesson that you want readers to learn, your moral or your message. And before you start writing, you need to determine what the big problem in your story is going to be. What's the biggest problem that your character is faced with? They probably will face lots of little problems, but what's the big problem that they are facing? And then finally, how do they solve that big problem? Maybe your problem is adjusting to a new country, and the only thing they do to solve that is to continue living there and trying it and just letting it come with time. Maybe your big problem is one of your family members got sent back and wasn't allowed to enter the United States. And your resolution has to do with how you're going to get that family member back. Or maybe your family decides to go back to the country with them. So think about what your big problem is going to be and what your resolution is going to be. After you identify those major things on your sheet, your setting, your characters over here on the side, your theme towards the right there, your conflict and resolution, then you can start filling in your events, your major events, your big problem, and then how things kind of get solved, okay? This doesn't have to be complete sentences. I think because of space-wise, it would be better if you just jotted down some keywords and ideas as to how the events are going to play out, okay? Once you have turned in your story map, you will get a signature from Ms. Hardesty or me, and then you'll be ready to write. So when you are ready to write, this is the process you'll follow. The first thing you need to write is a hook. You need to write something interesting to draw your reader in and keep them focused. Maybe you start with a memory your immigrant character has that's startling, or something that they smell or hear, or someone yelling at them in a different language, or something interesting to draw your reader in. You also need to set the stage. That means you need to tell the setting in a creative way. You might say something like, the smell of potatoes ruminated in my nose. It's all we've been eating for days. It was 1865, and we were on our way to the United States, or something like that. It's a good idea to look back through Esperanza Rising or Blood on the River to look at how those two authors say the setting in the beginning of their story so that the reader knows where and when the story is taking place. As you're writing your story, write in the structure of chronological order. Make sure that your events go in order. It just would be confusing for the reader if you didn't do that. Make sure that you include your conflict, your big problem, and how that's resolved. Use those steps on your story map to help you get to that conflict and then solve that problem, okay? That's how you should use your plan to help you write. And then finally, write your ending. The ending doesn't have to, but it should be connected to the theme. So maybe the character learned a lesson and that was the theme, or maybe the resolution was the theme, but you need to tie up your story with a nice bow and end the story connecting back to your theme or connecting back to your hook. Like, that first voyage over was so difficult. I can't eat potatoes ever again, still to this day, but I am glad to be in America. So maybe you connect back to your hook, or you connect back to your theme, but your ending needs to connect with one of those two things, okay? Again, you will need to make sure you have these notes in your notebook or in your Google Keep, and you'll need to submit a copy of those as your submission for this assignment.